No deal on canola or EVs, but lots of talk about oil and gas. The latest on Carney's trip to China is coming up on Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has wrapped up his first full day of meetings in China. It's just after 1 o'clock in the morning there, tomorrow morning, in Beijing. And another MOU has been signed. And again, it's about energy. An agreement signed by Canada's Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson says Canada and China agree that conventional energy, aka oil and gas, will play an important role in the energy transition, and that the two countries will pursue opportunities in the areas of oil, LNG, and LPG. Speaking in Beijing, Mr. Hodgson said it's not just about oil and gas, it's also about getting to net zero.
This was a framing around Canada and China sharing a view on how to get to net zero. This was a framing around how we work together in, yes, conventional energy, but also in clean energy. We met today with a number of clean energy companies who are world leaders in things like onshore and offshore wind, in world leaders, things like solar, world leaders in things like grid storage. We had comprehensive discussions around how they would like to bring that technology to Canada, help us deploy that so we can deliver affordable green power to power the transition to net zero. Yes, we also talked about conventional energy. We talked about it in the context of they really like that we produce the lowest carbon intensity LNG in the world. They are an investor in our first LNG project. They are going to be an investor in our second LNG project. And they are a major user of our conventional oil and gas.
Hodgson was asked if the government is open to more Chinese investment in the Alberta oil sands. In 2012, the Harper government effectively banned Chinese firms from taking over any Canadian energy companies. That came shortly after the same government approved CNOOC's takeover of Nexen. Hodgson didn't rule it out.
Today, China is a major investor in the oil sands, both as an operator and as a passive investor. They desire to have more of our energy. As long as they're a responsible producer, we're open to more investment from China.
Can I ask you to clarify that answer, please? The 2012 policy walled off new investment, and you say they're an active player today. Sure, because of previous investments. Are you open to changing the Investment Canada Act to bring in new, more Chinese investment in the oil sands?
Look, they're already major investors. They have the opportunity to increase their production. If they, like anyone else, is going to invest in new operations, they would go through the Investment Canada Act. But let me be clear. We are here because we share a goal. We share a goal on getting to net zero. We believe we have lots of common interests with respect to how we use clean energy to get there, and we have common interests around how to get there on a conventional basis.
Mr. Hodgson summed up his remarks today by saying the message he's getting loud and clear is that China wants more Canadian energy.
China is looking for reliable trading partners that don't use energy for coercion. China is already a major consumer of Canadian energy, like we heard when I was in the UK, like we heard when I was in Germany, like my colleagues have already heard in Japan and Korea. The world wants more of what Canada has. Canada has the lowest carbon intensity LNG in the world, and we are decarbonizing our barrels and more aggressively looking to decarbonize our barrels than any other country in the world. That's consistent with the values of many of our trading partners, including the Chinese. They want more of what we've got.
Several front bench Liberal cabinet ministers are part of the Canadian delegation in China. They include the industry minister, Melanie Joly. She was asked about the potential for a breakthrough on tariffs on Chinese-made EVs in exchange for tariff relief from China on canola and other agricultural and seafood products. She said there could be news on that tomorrow, but that her focus right now is shoring up the Canadian auto industry given what's happening in the United States.
Tomorrow, there's an important meeting tomorrow with President Xi regarding also how can we make sure that we do more Canada and China together. I think a lot of people in the auto sector right now, I'm thinking obviously of auto workers, have been preoccupied when hearing what is happening south of the border and the different comments regarding the capacity of Canada to continue to export autos, cars across North America. And so that's why my team and I have been working on a new auto strategy, because our goal is to make sure that we favor auto production in Canada.
Both Hodgson and Jolie were pressed by one news reporter, longtime Parliament Hill correspondent David Aiken, to explain why Canada should be doing more business with China at all, given China's record of human rights abuses and state and corporate espionage.
We're using burner phones for the first time when we covered this because China spies on journalists and businessmen. China intercepts communications. Is China really the right kind of partner for Canadian industry?
Listen, we've been clear-eyed. We're eyes wide open. We know this. But there's been investments by Canadian companies for years here. Tomorrow I'm meeting with Magna. Magna, one of the biggest auto parts companies in the world. They have 30,000 people working here. We're meeting with Manulife. We're meeting with BMO. These companies have been in China for years. Now, obviously, we're having these conversations with the Chinese government. If they're going to invest in our country, they need to make sure that our companies are able to invest and have access to stability and have access to a form of certainty. And so that's what we're working on.
The next big item on Prime Minister Carney's agenda is that official meeting with China's president, Xi Jinping, scheduled to happen at 11:40 a.m. Beijing time. That's 10:45 p.m. in the Eastern time zone, so late tonight for us. Prime Minister will then hold a news conference a few hours later. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
You have questions
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
on News Radio.
He's my friend on the right side of things. Michael Taube is back with us, syndicated columnist and speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Hello there, Michael.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
I'm okay. The weather could be better, I understand, for many people, and including the kids. It's a snow day for a lot of people in Toronto today.
Which is rather nice. Yeah, my son is off on a snow day as well. And although we're not getting quite the amount you are in Ottawa, we're probably going to end up with somewhere in the neighborhood of they're suggesting 20 to 35 centimeters by the end of it. It is starting to taper off a little bit in Toronto. So probably within the next hour or two, I'll be able to go out for the second time today and shovel. But I'm sure you've had it a lot worse. And based on what your producer was telling me, it looks like you're very much waist high in the snow, whereas I'm fairly deep, but not quite as high.
Well, we've had our fill of it, that's for sure. There's this huge storm system. If you look at it on a map, it's really something else. It runs from like Cincinnati all the way up to Sept-Îles in like northern Quebec. So it's a big one. And, it's not just the snow. Very high wind as well to blow it all around. It's just one of those days. Welcome to winter. Here we go again.
That's right.
So let's get into the politics. You had a column in the National Post recently about Pierre Poilievre, who is just a couple of weeks away from facing a leadership review at a party convention in Calgary.
Right.
And he's kind of been the odd man out. Mark Carney is certainly, dominating the headlines with his trip to China right now. But how can Pierre Poilievre recapture some political momentum?
Yeah, that was part of my weekly column that I write for the Post. And you're right. I started looking at it in two ways, basically looking at the two tasks that Poilievre will have at the beginning of the year. The easier of the two to me is basically passing over the leadership review, which will happen later this month, January 29th to 31st. So aside from early polls, which you and I talked about one of them, I believe, the Angus Reid poll that came out, where, the differentiation was when they polled people, they were looking at conservative voters and not specifically at Conservative Party members. The party members, the grassroots members, those are the ones who actually choose the leader, whether the leader should stay on, leave, they elect a new one. And the Conservative Party, the grassroots membership, is heavily behind Pierre Poilievre. He is not going to struggle. I think that probably he'll be in the very low 80s, as all things considered. It could be higher. Some have suggested it could be higher. It's possible. But I don't think it's going to be as big an issue. And, again, it's the theory of making a mountain out of a molehill. There was really never that much trouble. But obviously, people who don't like Mr. Poilievre, who don't agree with his ideas, his leadership, etc., they're the ones focused on that. But he'll bypass that, I believe, pretty easily. Which then comes on to the bigger task, and that's really what the column was about, which is how do you regain your lost political momentum? And while some conservatives like to argue he hasn't, the end result is he did, because obviously he was marching along quite nicely before the whole thing with U.S. President Donald Trump and his tariff battle began. And as I've written in several things before, not just the National Post, but I've written it for, the Walrus magazine internationally in the U.S. and UK, etc. Again, that was the mitigating issue it did. It was not Mark Carney running some sort of a fantastic campaign. He had nothing to do with it. The NDP was dead in the water. The Bloc Québécois was isolated. The Canadian election, as I've often said, didn't have much to do with Canadian parties this time. It actually had to do with Mr. Trump and his tariffs. It's very unusual. It made things kind of strange, but obviously that's the way the election was fought. And in the end, Canadians decided, for reasons that I can't really even understand to this day, that they actually thought that Mark Carney would be the best person to handle Donald Trump, which I think it's fair to say, Rob, no matter what your feelings are, Mr. Carney, he has not done a very good job of that at all, to the point now where the relationship between the U.S. and Canada is poor. But for Poilievre, the real key here is what do you do? And my suggestion was not to make these radical shifts that some are suggesting, to look towards red Tory ideas or other concepts of that nature, but it's more realistic. It's similar to something I said last year, which is to make little changes here and there, but nothing huge, because Pierre Poilievre is who he is. We know what his personality is like. We know what his leadership style is like. We know what his oratorical skills are like. He is who he is. And if you want to make this huge, massive makeover of someone, it may work in certain cases for certain politicians, but for others, based on the brand that they build or the personality that they have, it's not going to be realistic. And for Pierre Poilievre, anything like that would be ridiculous, and the voters would see through it. That's the key.
Well, let's pick up on this, and what you think some of the messages should be that he should be hammering away on. For 2025, a lot of it was, you deserve better. You need a lower cost of living, pocketbook issues, cost of living style issues. I want to get at the heart of what you think he should be really emphasizing as another political year is set to begin. I'm Rob Snow, here with Michael Taube. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Back with Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, speechwriter for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. We are talking about Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, getting his political mojo back. Michael was writing about that in the National Post. You say he needs to battle for the imagination of the Canadian voter. How does he do that?
Yes, that's exactly, and that's the concept of what I call forward-thinking conservatism. That's, again, not to spend too much time in the weeds. That's a theory that's been around for a long time, but has never really been defined one way or the other. I sort of define forward-thinking conservatism as a modern conservatism that defines what it can be and should be, as opposed to what others want it to be. Back from our first segment, people telling him what to do, no. Be forward-thinking. Define conservatism as you want to do, as any conservative leader before you has done. But use it in such a way that it benefits you, and obviously your positive attributes and ideas and concepts come out. So in other words, what you said before we left for break, pocketbook ideas, affordable housing, reducing the influence of gatekeepers in society, high costs of food and electricity, etc. Those are things that won him lots of votes and lots of ideas and lots of favor from conservatives and non-conservatives alike, so keep that in mind. I suggested in the second last paragraph of my weekly column for the National Post that basically what you should do now is to fight for the battle of the imagination of Canadian voters. This includes rebuilding Canada-U.S. relations as best you can, emphasizing border security, which is extremely important, supporting trade liberalization, healthier free markets, expressing clear support for Israel, critiquing the rise of North American-style socialism in U.S. cities like New York City and Seattle, and also take the lead on issues that will likely become significant matters over time. Protection of free speech, monitoring the growth of artificial intelligence, for example, is supporting enhanced market choice for telecommunications, ending supply management for the dairy industry, which I think it's high time for that, and much more. Those are the sorts of issues that can rebuild conservatism, get it more focused, and make him a viable prime minister or candidate for prime minister once more.
Very interesting. In the National Post this week, read the column. Very quickly, we only have about a minute and a half here. Let's talk a little bit about the resignation of Premier François Legault in Quebec. What do you think that means for our politics in the months and years ahead?
It's interesting. I mean, a lot of it depends on who they actually elect as their new leader, or in this case, new premier, before he actually steps down. He's waiting until a successor is chosen. I think this may be the CAQ's only means of, surviving that next election. Polls seem to show that the Parti Québécois is going to win rather easily in the provincial election in Quebec, which I believe is in October. And if that's the case, well, they need to do something pretty desperate. Legault ran, the province for a long time. People have good thoughts and bad thoughts about him. But clearly his time had come. He realized that his time in politics was limited. He obviously wants the CAQ to continue. He doesn't want the government to become this left-wing social democratic and formerly separatist party back in power. This is a good way to do it. And it may be their only chance. So we'll see what happens. So for the time to come, it's a good, for the time being, it's a good idea. The time to come, hopefully it saves the CAQ and allows them to stay in government.
Okay. Happy shoveling. I'll keep
You
you in
too.
I'll keep you in my thoughts and prayers if you'll do the same for me, Michael. Okay.
I most
Thank
certainly
you.
will, because yours are going to be much more than mine. Take care, my friend.
Okay. Bye-bye. Yeah. That's Michael Taube in snowy and cold and windy Toronto today. And I'm Rob Snow. We'll talk a little bit more about the Prime Minister's trip to China and what we're hearing from his front bench MPs, with at least 3 of them having a news conference today. Some interesting stuff to come out of that news conference. That's when we come back with our Newsday panel. You're on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
With our Thursday Newsday political panel, I am pleased to welcome today Cam Holmstrom, principal at Niipaawi Strategies. How are you, Cam?
Very good, Rob. Always glad to be here.
Yeah, good to hear from you. Along with Ashton Arsenault, a partner at Crestview Strategies, and welcome back to you as well, Ashton. Great to hear from you.
Good to be here, Rob.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're hearing from Liberal cabinet ministers on the first full day of the Prime Minister's trip to China. Canada and China have signed an MOU on energy cooperation, quote, recognizing that conventional energy continues to play an important role in the energy transition. They agree to strengthen exchanges in areas such as oil and gas resource development, including crude oil, liquefied natural gas, and liquefied petroleum gas trade. Ashton, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, there are a lot of eyeballs on this trip and what's coming out of it, given it's been nearly a decade since the sitting prime minister stepped on Chinese soil. And look, I get that trading relationships are important these days, given everything that has happened, but we should also remember who we're dealing with here. The Chinese government has arbitrarily detained Canadians. They have interfered in our elections and continue to do so. They've aligned with our enemies in many cases, and they are a persistent global security threat. And so beyond that, if you can stomach it, I think developing additional demand and markets, including, the infrastructure required, if we're talking about energy, for more Canadian oil and gas to be sold elsewhere, I think is a positive economic development for the country. And, you look at something like investment in pipeline development, I think that's ultimately something that needs to be monitored and scrutinized very closely. And, for Alberta and Canada, I think everybody is largely getting to the same conclusion. I think we need more of that. That's the reality of the situation. So I'm looking to see what else comes out of this trip.
Okay, right. But you sound cautious and wary. Is that fair? Be cautious and wary.
Cautious and wary and oh so skeptical.
And oh so skeptical. Okay. Right. Cam, what do you think about what you've heard so far? Let's start with this deal. They have a huge appetite for oil, natural gas, and we want to sell it to them. What do you think about that?
You know what? I share the wariness. I share the caution. But this is the world we live in now. You know what? It is like I guess a lot of us have gotten our heads around the fact that it is what it is. There are no perfect solutions because, unfortunately, the stable trading part and most reliable piece of this whole puzzle has gone off the deep end. And unfortunately, a lot of the descriptions that Ashton correctly used to describe China, you could start to also use to describe the Trump administration. And that's put us in a position where, we do have to diversify our markets. We do have to look elsewhere. And that means we have to have conversations with people we may not necessarily want to always have conversations with. So when I see an agreement like this, if it's to sell oil and gas and whatnot, you know what? Am I totally comfortable with it? No. But at the same time, these are the things that need to happen as best as possible. I think the idea at this point is to try to not be dependent on any one customer at the end of the day. It's to try to spread out our risk as much as possible. And unfortunately, that does mean you do have to have some risk in that. But when it comes to how deeper the relationship goes, that's where I guess I'm watching for at the end of the day. The idea that we would be selling more oil and gas to the Chinese is not a shock to me. That's kind of maybe what I would have expected from this trip. It's going to be the other pieces about how deep does that go and how much further does that go.
Okay. Ashton, just based on what we've heard so far, do you think any of this is, say, bullish for pipeline development in Canada, thinking of the Ottawa-Alberta MOU?
Yeah, all we really have to go on at this point is, sort of limited remarks made by Minister Hodgson. But I think, look, two things can be true at the same time. I think Canada desperately needs investment in its oil and gas sector for the purposes of building up our economy. But we also, I think, at least should be exceptionally careful about where that investment is coming from and what the intentions of that investment are. And so it's very often the case that foreign investment comes with ulterior motives. Nobody should be surprised by that. And so obviously, to me, it's important to understand what you're signing up for and where the pain points might be.
Sounded like you were nodding in agreement there, Cam.
Yeah, well, this is it, right? Like, let's just be honest. No one does any investment of any sort out of true altruism or just to be nice guys, right? Everyone has their own motivations and agendas. Even our allies. It just so happens that when our allies do, our motivations and agendas tend to align. The thing with what's happening here is that, to me, the only way that pipeline is going to, the one pipeline in particular, the proposal going to the Northwest BC coast, which I'm still shaking my head around why it must be that, but there has to be a market for it. There has to be a business case for it, because that's been the big problem so far. No one wants to invest in it because there is no business case to go along with the risk and everything that comes along with trying to plow that thing through there. But, of course, there are other routes. But so you need the business case. So if this MOU helps build the business case for a pipeline or multiple pipelines to export markets, that I think is going to help maybe bring some more investment to the table. So, yeah, I share the trepidation here because there's nothing clean and neat about any of this, unfortunately.
All right, we'll be right back. Just getting started here. Thursday Newsday political panel with Ashton, Arsenault, and Cam Holmstrom. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
We're back with Ashton and Arsenault, partner at Crestview Strategies. From Niipaawi Strategies, Cam Holmstrom. It's our Newsday political panel. Still no news about Ottawa lowering tariffs on Chinese-made EVs in exchange for tariff relief on Canadian exports like canola, peas, pork, seafood. Cam, what are you expecting to happen on that front?
To be honest, I wasn't having any big expectations anything would happen on that front, mostly just because the way this trip was being lined up, it seemed as more of an entree, as a reintroduction, less about larger deals. Although I do know that Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe is on the trip, which is interesting because obviously there must be some expectation something was going to come for him to be on that trip. But my general expectation was this wasn't going to happen, that those conversations would build over time. But you know what? The fact is that that's not going to be an easy basically, at the end of the day, Canada can't cut one to save the other. It's just not an option to be able to do that because it goes too much to one side. They're going to have to try to find a middle road as to what that might look like. But to be honest, I have a hard time picturing what it is because the second that the government decides to let off on the EV front, it's going to be something that's definitely going to trigger the Trump administration, whether it's the right thing to do or not, because let's just be honest, there are things we're going to do that are going to trigger the Trump administration. That can't be the reason to do it.
And the Ford government wouldn't be happy either in Ontario.
Well, true.
So you didn't have high hopes anyway. You didn't have high hopes anyway. Let's get to Ashton. Ashton, what do you think?
I didn't have high hopes either. I mean, it's an apples and oranges comparison, frankly. As this is the Chinese government, there are national security threats to consider with electric vehicles, as an example. I mean, they're giant moving computers capable of many things, and I don't think anyone wants a scenario where Canadian workers are being undercut by foreign-made electric vehicles. And I am certain the Chinese government is pushing on this, but I'm not sure it's a smart idea. And to Cam's point, we really shouldn't be in the business of cutting off our nose to spite our face on this one. And, haggling between canola and electric vehicles just doesn't seem like a wise idea to me.
Okay. I'm going to play a clip here from Tim Hodgson's media availability today, the Natural Resources Minister, because he seemed open to letting Chinese state-owned companies make major investments in Canada in the oil and gas sector, maybe other industries. That's a big shift from 2012. Back then, the Harper government changed the rules after a significant deal in the oil sands involving the state-owned Chinese company CNOOC taking over Nexen in a $15 billion deal. Let's play the clip.
Today, China is a major investor in the oil sands, both as an operator and as a passive investor. They desire to have more of our energy. As long as they're a responsible producer, we're open to more investment from China.
Can I ask you to clarify that
That's
answer,
good.
please?
Thank you. We're open to more investment from China. What do you think of that, Cam?
That's amazingly naive. This minister is, for all of his business background and expertise, I am very taken aback by his political naivete because, that may all be true about Chinese, their desire to invest and all of that. But if you can't see the security risks and you can't see the door the precedents that you create if you allow it, then you're not in the right position. The fact is that we have not allowed this kind of investment either in the oil and gas sector or in the mining sector, particularly in the Arctic, because of the security issues that come around it. And let's just be real. If we're going to allow this with the Chinese investment, seeing how our nature of our relationship is changing with the Americans, are we going to allow an American quote-unquote state-owned agency, because those are starting to happen now too, with what the Trump administration is doing, are we going to allow them to make those kind of investments and potentially control a Canadian resource or infrastructure or anything like that? Like that's got to be a no-go. Like, to me, that just doesn't fly in this environment at all.
Doesn't fly. Okay, interesting. Ashton, what do you think about that? Open to more Chinese investment.
It's a political calculation. It's also a huge risk. Cam and I are on the same page today. I mean, there's a reason why the rules in place were established going back to 2012. And actually, if we take a small stroll down memory lane here, after Trudeau was elected in 2015, they definitely tried to sort of open up China and relax investment thresholds coming out of China all until, things went belly up in 2017. So there's precedent for this within the Liberal Party, but, Cam's absolutely right. I think it's absurd. I think if you can't see the security and safety implications for what they are, then you're essentially just chasing the almighty dollar because there's nobody else willing to stand in line to actually invest in something. And that should also tell you something. So, I just think it's something that the Canadian federal government, and I'm speaking as sort of a collective here, not in a partisan sense. I think it's something that we have to approach with extreme trepidation for the implications involved.
Very good. When we come back, we'll shift our focus to provincial affairs and a rift over whiskey between Doug Ford and Wab Kinew. When we come back, pour yourself a stiff one. It's News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Ashton Arsenault is with us, partner Crestview Strategies, Cam Holmstrom from Niipaawi Strategies. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has vowed that Crown Royal will be removed from store shelves in Ontario's LCBO because the company is closing an Ontario plant in Amherstburg. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew wants Doug Ford to change his mind because the product is made in Gimli, Manitoba. Long history there, and there are concerns about job losses in Manitoba and the impact on Manitoba farmers. It's a rift between two premiers who would generally get along and have kind of the same folksy approach to politics. What do you make of this, Ashton?
I'm sick and tired of the booze wars. Now it's Canadians impacting Canadians in a way which isn't great. And I mean, putting Crown Royal to the side, look, I'm partial to the odd California Red and bourbon on the rocks. So I do hope this gets resolved soon. But, I mean, here's the other side of it. If you look at the numbers, all of this is actually pretty popular with Canadians, at least American booze being on shelves. I think I saw a stat which said like 80% of Canadians agree we should keep American booze off the shelves, which is a really, really high number. And yeah, this is a different situation. I think everyone is notionally aware of, Crown Royal's Canadian roots and the situation at play here. And I think at the end of the day, Ontario and Manitoba have more concerns to work on together than whether or not a certain bottle of booze is on the shelves. But, of course, it's an irritant because one province is impacting another. And so, to me, both premiers are sort of playing to their base on this one. Okay. And I think time will tell if it ends up creating a big rift.
What do you think, Cam?
I kind of agree with Ashton on the last point. Like, I don't know how much of a rift it's going to create because I mean, this is very situational specific because of what's happening. Because let's be honest, like Crown Royal is a Canadian institution, and as someone who doesn't drink, but who used to, and a lot of people who do, Crown Royal, the bottle, the bag, like it's such a Canadian institution and speaks to who we are. So when they're pulling up stakes from Amherst, I understand why Premier Ford would take the steps that he would take. That makes complete sense. It's an affront. To me, that'd be like if Molson's or Labatt or some other, or Kokanee or something like that went and closed their production and shipped it to the U.S., right? Like, I get why you stand that up, even if it might hurt another province. But that being said, I'm a Northwestern Ontario boy. Gimli is a beautiful place. It's a small community. It is part of the pride of that region and of that work. I understand where Premier Kinew is coming from because, unfortunately, there are not many investors or people looking to rush in to invest in small town Canada. Let's just be real about it. Unless you're in the resource sector, a lot of people aren't going to invest in manufacturing in Amherstburg or Gimli or any place like that right now. So I understand why you fight for that job and you try to get the Premier to back down. I'd like to think they're going to be able to find some kind of compromise. I'd like to think so. But unfortunately, let's just be honest, this decision being taken by a multinational company who is frankly looking for their best interest, not the interests of the communities or the workers that work for them. And that to me is part of the problem. I'd like to think that they will back down, that the two premiers find some common ground and get them to back down. But Yeah, we'll see. Time will tell here.
But it's not a big rift. Then I described it as a rift.
No.
Maybe I'm overstating it then. Okay, fair enough. Okay, look, we're gonna have to wrap things up there for this week. Thanks for today. Great to hear both of you in the new political year, 2026. Look forward to many more contributions throughout the year, and we'll speak soon.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks.
Yeah,
Take care.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Ashton Arsenault is partner at Crestview Strategies, and Cam Holmstrom, the pride of Kenora. He is the principal at Niipaawi Strategies. Coming up right after the latest breaking news, it's Talkback. And once again, we're talking about the Prime Minister's trip to China and some remarks that his top cabinet minister on the natural resources file made today, that Canada is open to more investment by China, potentially in, for example, the oil sands. It's a very important topic, and we hope to hear from you today on it. We'll explain it coming right up. And then we welcome your calls, 1-833-668-2577, to have your say on Talkback today. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. We got a big one for you today. The topic is Chinese investment in Canada. It's a big deal. It's a big story. I know we talked about Carney's trip to China, closer ties with China, earlier in the week. You had a lot to say about it then. I hope you have a lot to say about this angle of the story. I really need your feedback. Need to know where you stand. It's very important. Very important. Here's the main question today. Should major companies in China, big state-owned companies, be allowed to make major investments in Canada or even take over big Canadian companies? Give it some thought. Give me a call. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. We've had lots of remarks today from some Liberal cabinet ministers who are with Prime Minister Carney on his official visit to China. Tim Hodgson is there, the Natural Resources Minister. Melanie Joly is there. She's the Industry Minister. Anita Anand is there as well, the Foreign Affairs Minister. The big news, I think, to come out of this so far, this trip, is that Canada and China have signed an MOU. And the two countries are going to pursue opportunities in the oil and gas business. China wants to buy more Canadian oil, wants to buy more Canadian natural gas. And many people may see that as a win. There's an enormous appetite for Canadian energy in China. They need it. We have lots of it. Who knows? Maybe it even advances the possibility of a pipeline from northern Alberta to the BC coast. That's one thing. But here's another. What if Chinese companies, big state-owned oil and gas companies, want to make investments in, say, the oil sands, or even take over, say, Canadian oil sands companies? What if large state-owned Chinese companies want to make large investments in an LNG project, or even take over a Canadian LNG company? Should that be allowed? Should something like that be allowed? What do you think? I'm going to play you some remarks here from the Natural Resources Minister, Tim Hodgson, speaking with the Canadian news media that's on this trip to China, along with the Prime Minister and these cabinet ministers. And he's not ruling out, we're going to pay the first clip here, Curtis. He's not ruling out letting Chinese companies invest more in Canada in places like the oil sands, for example. Let's roll the tape.
Today, China is a major investor in the oil sands, both as an operator and as a passive investor. They desire to have more of our energy. As long as they're a responsible producer, we're open to more investment from China.
We're open to more investment from China. We're open to more investment from China in places like the oil sands. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? Should that be allowed? Because that would be a major shift from the current policy. Many years ago, back in 2012, a massive Chinese company called CNOOC owned by the Chinese government, bought a big Canadian oil company called Nexen. You may remember that story at the time. It was a $15 billion deal at the time. It was big news. The Harper government approved that takeover, but said it would be the last of its kind. And the Harper government changed the rules and said big state-owned companies in China can't take over Canadian companies in places like the oil sands, for example. And the rationale was these natural resources, like Alberta's oil, are too strategically important to Canada. We can't allow them to be bought by a foreign country like China. That's the way it's worked since 2012. So today, after Mr. Hodgson said that, reporters had a few more questions for him. You're going to hear Tonda McCharles here, the Ottawa bureau chief for the Toronto Star. Let's listen to clip 2.
Can I ask you to clarify that answer, please? The 2012 policy walled off new investment, and you say they're an active player today. Sure, because of previous investments. Are you open to changing the Investment Canada Act to bring in new, more Chinese investment in the oil sands?
Look, they're already major investors. They have the opportunity to increase their production. If they, like anyone else, is going to invest in new operations, they would go through the Investment Canada Act. But let me be clear. We are here because we share a goal. We share a goal on getting to net zero. We believe we have lots of common interests with respect to how we use clean energy to get there, and we have common interests around how to get there on a conventional basis. And we're going to exploit that for the benefit of Canadian workers and for Canadians.
Interesting comments. We have a lot of common interests, Canada and China. We have a lot of common interests. He met with the big oil and gas companies that are all owned by the Chinese government today, Mr. Hodgson. And he seems open to letting them make even more investments in places like the oil sands. He didn't rule out letting companies from China take over Canadian companies. It would be a huge shift in government policy. I want to know what you think about it. What do you think about it? Is it Alberta oil? Is it Canadian oil? What if it was Chinese-owned oil? It just happened to be in the ground in northern Alberta. 1-833-668-2577. This is not just about Alberta. It's not just an Alberta issue. In Nova Scotia, the government there wants to be a big player in LNG. What if China wants to make a big investment or even own a project? The offshore of Nova Scotia. In Ontario, there are big plans for the Ring of Fire in northern Ontario. Lots of nickel, lots of copper, lots of critical minerals. What if one of the big Chinese-owned companies wanted a piece of the action in northern Ontario? Should they be allowed to make that investment? Maybe even take over a Canadian company that's involved in the Ring of Fire? And the list goes on. Uranium, potash. It's a big, big issue. There's lots of angles to look at it. We'll explore them with your help. Should big Chinese companies, big state-owned companies in China, be allowed to make major investments in Canada in places like the oil sands? 1-833-668-2577 is our call-in line. If you've never called before, mention that. We'll make your call a priority. I'm Rob Snow. This is Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're asking, should big Chinese companies, big state-owned companies in China, be allowed to make major investments in Canada? In strategically important places like the oil sands, for example, or even take over Canadian companies in such places. 1-833-668-2577, a couple of lines there. Here's another angle to the story. What about the Americans? What about the Trump administration? What would they think if Canada allowed that? I would remind you on page 12 or 13 of this 33-page national security strategy document from the Trump administration that was released a few months ago that we've talked a lot about here. It says this, quote, "We will deny," we meaning the United States, "will deny non-hemispheric competitors like China the ability to position forces or any threatening capabilities, or to own or control strategically vital assets in our hemisphere. Well, what's more strategically vital than oil or natural gas or these days critical minerals? In other words, how would the United States react if Canada, right next door, allowed big Chinese companies that are owned by the government of China to invest and own operations in places like the oil sands, for example? Really love to know how you view this. It's very important. Many ways to look at it. One is Donald Trump said this week, we don't need anything Canada has. So maybe Canadians shouldn't even be concerned about how Donald Trump would react to major investments by Chinese companies in Canada. Another is money. Whether it's a Canadian investment, an American investment, Chinese investment, Canada needs other countries to invest here. It's good for the economy. But another one is this. These assets, oil, natural gas, critical minerals, uranium, potash, they're too important to Canada. They're vital to Canada's interests, and we can't let foreign countries buy them. What do you think? Let's go to Bob is in Calgary today. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Rob. How's it going?
Very good. What do you think?
I think Canada, we're in no position to say no to any sort of foreign investment right now, right? Economy isn't well, and I think Carney, whatever he's doing right now, he's proposing, saying that he doesn't really have any spine as a Liberal leader. I think that right now we do have the resources, and we need to utilize that resources to Canada's best interests. So we've done this before, right? Like we had other foreign investment from other company. For example, like Husky was owned by another company in Hong Kong or in China, right? And then now it was switched to Cenovus. So, we have been using all these resources, and we've been selling it.
But the rules were changed in 2012, and there was kind of like this wall built around to keep China out of expanding their operations in places like the oil sands. Should that continue? Or are you saying foreign investment is foreign investment and we need foreign investment?
Exactly. And Carney, during the vote, it was like 6 months ago, he was saying that China is one of our largest security threat. And here he is right now in China saying that, China is one of our, best business partner. I don't know what to trust this guy, right?
Okay.
But I think the reality is right now we're in no position to say no to foreign investment.
Fair enough. Gotcha, Bob. Thank you. Kurt up next, also in Calgary today. Kurt, what do you think?
Just a couple of things, really. I think by the time Trump's gone in, 2 years?
Yeah, a little more than that. Yeah.
Is that accurate? Okay.
A little more than that. Yeah.
I think his implications, and his threats and his deranged views, I think are going to go by the wayside, because if we implement things now and he's gone, we don't have to deal with the ego and the narcissistic bully type behavior, making decisions on behalf of the world. I think that we got to get going now. And it's not Alberta, it's Canada. It's BC saying, oh, no, we don't want this. Well, first of all, I think that that's very shallow of Canada. Your views and all the tree huggers. Oil came out of the ground to begin with. It's not going anywhere. And, our economy is extremely important across Canada. We're already a non-player due to the Liberal decisions.
Okay, but what I want to get at is something like the oil sands in Alberta, or potash in Saskatchewan, or uranium in Saskatchewan, or critical minerals in Northern Ontario. Are they too important to this country to allow foreign control by companies from China? What do you think?
I don't
What do you
agree.
think about that?
I do not agree.
You don't agree?
With Chinese companies.
Okay.
No, they should not have a foreign investment interest in Alberta's oil sands or in minerals or anything like that. But we should be a player to trade oil and minerals for the
with them.
Economy in general. But I don't like China owning anything here.
All right, gotcha. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Good answer. 1-833-668-2577. More of your calls, please, on this important topic today. Foreign investment in Canada from a country like China into major league strategic sectors of the economy. Your thoughts. News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
One of the big questions we're trying to get answered today is this. Are some assets too important, too vital to Canada to let them be owned by interest in other countries, especially other countries that may not fully be in line with our interests, like China? And that's why we're asking, should big Chinese state-owned companies be allowed to make major investments in Canada in places like the oil sands, or even take over Canadian companies in places like the oil sands? Just as one example, there are all kinds of other sectors, as I mentioned, critical minerals, potash, uranium, the offshore oil and natural gas industry in Atlantic Canada. Tim is in Nova Scotia. Hello, Tim. Thanks for calling, Tim.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Tim. What do you think?
What do I think? I think we're basically on the same topic we were on yesterday, and that the Liberals are like, this is crazy to even have this discussion about allowing foreign companies ownership over the vital minerals that we have, oil, gas, whatever it be, when we could be refining it ourselves and selling the refined product. This is just, I just don't understand this. People are literally saying they get the DTS syndrome, the Donald Trump syndrome, and they're like, oh, this bully, this fascist, this, that. Meanwhile, we got an actual dictatorship that's oppressing people for like decades. They don't have elections. They're so you'd rather deal with like this foreign entity that has been like the weather balloons, interfering with our elections, and you want to give them more footing? Why not build these pipelines? Like, you want to talk about bullies? Why don't you talk about BC and Quebec that won't allow the pipelines to go through? Or like, I just can't wrap my head around how you can make an argument to be pro-China. It's kind of like getting our oil from Saudi Arabia as abysmal human rights when we could be getting our own through Canada.
Okay. So the idea, because they're already operating in the oil sands because they took over a company in the oil sands. What if they were allowed to take over another company in the oil sands, or buy a company in the northern Ontario, for example, and that's involved in mining or something like that?
Well, wasn't that part of the reason that they were? It should be 100%.
It should be.
Why do we want a foreign government controlling what goes on here? They're not an independent company. It's not like Ford, for example, decided they were going to get into the oil business and bought. They're a private business. They're not controlled or influenced directly by.
Right. Well, all the companies in China, the major companies in China, there are 3 of them that are involved in the oil and gas business. They're all owned by the government. They're all what we call state-owned enterprises, which is not unusual all over the world. We used to have one in this country, as a matter of fact. Okay, thank you. But you say off limits? No way. Understood. We'll be back on this topic, and we'll play again those very provocative comments from our Natural Resources Minister, Tim Hodson, to news reporters in Beijing today, and kind of set the table for today's discussion. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're asking, should big Chinese companies, big state-owned companies in China be allowed to make major investments in strategic areas of the economy in Canada, like the oil sands, for example, in Alberta, or even take over companies in areas of the economy like that? I ask this because of comments that we heard from Tim Hodgson today. He's in China along with Prime Minister Carney. He was in Beijing taking reporters' questions who asked him this very question. Let's listen to it again.
Today, China is a major investor in the oil sands, both as an operator and as a passive investor. They desire to have more of our energy. As long as they're a responsible producer, we're open to more investment from China.
Can I ask you to clarify that answer, please? The 2012 policy walled off new investment, and you say they're an active player today. Sure, because of previous investments. Are you open to changing the Investment Canada Act to bring in more Chinese investment in the oil sands?
Look, they're already major investors. They have the opportunity to increase their production. If they, like anyone else, is going to invest in new operations, they would go through the Investment Canada Act. But let me be clear. We are here because we share a goal. We share a goal on getting to net zero. We believe we have lots of common interests with respect to how we use clean energy to get there, and we have common interests around how to get there on a conventional basis. And we're going to exploit that for the benefit of Canadian workers and for Canadians.
Okay, so again, just to remind you and give it some history, back in 2012, it was a Conservative government. Prime Minister Stephen Harper came to the conclusion too many Canadian companies were being taken over. And he didn't like the idea of growing Chinese interest in the oil sands. And in the end, he did approve a deal that saw CNOOC, big state-owned oil company in China, do a massive takeover of Nexen. It was a $15 billion deal. The Nexen shareholders were very happy. They liked the deal. They sold the company. Mr. Harper drew a line in the oil sands after that deal and said, no more deals like that. Not on the oil sands. Anyway, should that continue to be the policy? 1-833-668-2577. Thank you for waiting. Greg is up next, also in Calgary today. Hi, Greg. Let's go to Linda in southern Alberta, please. Linda.
Hello.
Hi, Linda. Yes.
Hi. Yeah,
what's your opinion?
I think Harper's view should still stand. I've been in Alberta all my life. When we went through the big boom bust things and foreign investments were here and then they left and we were left hanging. So no. And as far as China's concerned, I think China's like the Walmart. You know, they're going to come in. Next thing you know, we're going to have no little industries left and they're just going to be the big guy.
Okay. Should that also apply to other sectors of the economy? As I say, we're getting lots of calls from Alberta today. I welcome those calls. It's not just an Alberta issue. You know, you have uranium, you have potash, you have offshore oil and natural gas in Atlantic Canada, critical minerals and mining in Northern Ontario.
I just think any of our industries are at the risk of being exploited just for a profit, a quick profit or something. So if they want to buy, want to be one of our importers or our exporters, fine, but not to be an investor right here in the country.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. To John up next in Calgary. Thank you, John, for calling. What's your opinion here, John?
Rob, great show. I just shake my head at the last comments. I mean, let's break this down. We have natural resources of many types in the country. We want those extracted, and we want to have jobs in the country with those extracts, whatever they may be. We need people who are expert at withdrawing those assets, and if they happen to be international, then so be it. We bring them in. We change the trade agreements to allow it. We're getting too emotional about who owns what. What we want is the jobs and the trade. And if it's China, for example, and that gives us an angle to sell our products into China because there's a better relationship between us, and it removes a little bit of the pressure on the relationship with the US, so be it. It is fundamentally a good thing, and the trade minister, in my opinion, was absolutely right.
Okay. Again, what I come back to is, are some assets too important to let them be, say, majority owned by interest in other countries, especially interests that could be hostile to our own interests, as we know China has been in the past? What do you think?
I mean, I think that could be true.
It's one thing. It's one thing if British Petroleum wants to come in and be a player in the oil sands. We would be more aligned, wouldn't you think, on say our worldview with the UK than say CNOOC in China.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. And once we open it up, maybe we'll find those companies will come in. But we have to deal with the people that want to trade. So if BP doesn't want to come in, then so be it. We should be open to international trade. In terms of protecting national assets, absolutely. But those are more, in my opinion, in the innovation space and the technology space. That's where that, in my opinion, comes from. Where it comes to extraction and natural resources, we want the smartest and best people in the world, whomever they work for, helping us do that as efficiently and as environmentally friendly as we can. So, yes, I agree with you, Rob, but not in relation to natural resources.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll be right back with more of your calls on this very important topic today. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. 1-833-668-2577. 3 or 4 lines available there. Please have your say. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should big state-owned companies in China be allowed to make major investments in Canada? In places like the oil sands, even take over Canadian companies. 1-833-668-2577. Keith in Calgary up next. Thank you for calling, Keith. You're on the air.
Hey, how's it going this morning?
Very good, Keith. What's your opinion, please?
I don't like to speak in absolutisms, but at risk of it, I'm against foreign ownership of anything, whether it be property or businesses or anything else in Canada. I don't see why we should give that sort of control to anyone, most especially not a foreign government, and most especially not on, critical things like mines and oil sands and resources and water and all the rest of it. There's a number of reasons I'm against it. I mean, accountability being one of them, profit loss being another, influence over the government. The list goes on. There's a lot of really insidious things that can be associated with having foreign ownership of things like that.
Okay. Mr. Hodgson seems to be saying, well, they're already here. They're already invested. If they want to expand their operations and they play by the Canadian rules and follow Canadian law, that's okay. What do you think of that?
I disagree with Mr. Hodgson.
You absolutely disagree?
Disagree with the Harper decision in 2012 as well. I don't think that should have been allowed to happen either.
Why not?
For the reasons that I just said. I mean, we already have problems with Chinese influence in government. Now, if we have a multi-billion-dollar lobby group with vested interests in the country, given a voice that expands further into
again, it was Mr. Harper who, after approving a big deal, the CNOOC-Nexen deal, said that's it. That'll be the last deal of its kind. And
right,
that's
and he should have cut it off before that happened. He shouldn't even have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, he should not have approved that deal. You're saying.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Understood. Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Let's take a call from Nova Scotia. Joe is there. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Rob. Appreciate you sharing time with me.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
What's your opinion?
No.
Absolutely no. Why do you say that?
No, absolutely not. Look at the future. I mean, where's the big money going to go? It's going to go back to China. We're going to get jobs and stuff like that, but we should honestly reap our own rewards. And yeah, I mean, no, like, I mean, if you can believe that the Chinese would adhere to Canadian culture, that's just not going to happen. It's not. So anyway, that's just my point. And go Red Blacks.
Go Red Blacks. Okay, well, okay. I'll maybe talk a little sports tomorrow, not today. Too serious today. Back to Calgary. Mike is in Calgary today. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
Very good, Mike. What's your opinion on the topic?
Well, I mean, I'm just reflecting back on the clip you just played recently there,
Yeah.
where he was saying that both countries are trying to achieve net zero equally, which I find is very ironic considering the amount of coal plants that they're still building in China at epic rates. So I don't know if we are aligned on our net zero goals. Back to the opinion of foreign ownership. I guess something I don't know, maybe you might, is how does it work in reverse? Does Canada have the right to invest in Chinese or any other country for that matters resources or anything like that?
That's one of the things that Melanie Joly said they were hoping to come out of whatever is announced at the end of this trip by the Prime Minister tomorrow, that there needs to be, recognition of and stability of, say, a Canadian investment in China. Right.
I mean, it is such a tough call. And I would agree with some of your previous callers recently here where they're worried about them having a controlled influence, where we have the Liberal government currently suggesting that it's going to give us jobs. On the flip side, those jobs can be used as leverage and influence down the road if they don't get their way with maybe further ownership than what they're allowed now, such as what they're suggesting is to increase. They're already here, now they can get more. Well, based on what? Like, is there no cap on what they have? I think the more people of Canada that you have control of by way of employment or otherwise, then I think they're going to get their way even more. It's definitely a slippery slope, and I therefore, all of that said, I'm absolutely against it.
All right. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Be back with more of your calls on Talkback today. The Natural Resources Minister is essentially saying here Canada and China's interests are aligned, and for that reason, if big state-owned companies in China want to expand on the investments that they've made in this country, they're open to it. If they want to make new investments in places like the oil sands, they'll take a look at it. Should they even take a look at it? That's what we're asking. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should state-owned companies in China be allowed to make major investments in Canada? In certain sectors of the economy, like the oil sands, or offshore oil and gas in Atlantic Canada, or uranium and potash in Saskatchewan, mining in Northern Ontario. What would you say? Samantha is in Calgary today. Hi, Samantha.
Hi.
Hi, Samantha.
So my understanding is that when you invest, if foreign people invest in, or businesses invest in China, usually you have to, the Chinese government has to partner with you and has access to, a bunch of your business and everything that you do in China. I think we should proceed very carefully because of our differences between us. But could we not set up parameters where they only can invest, but we have to invest in partnership so that you have way more oversight and control. If they want our oil, they want what we have. So to get it means maybe they have to have much more stringent rules and regulations around their investment because there is no history of trust.
So you would want increased oversight then?
Yes.
Is that right?
To me, that's the only way that it could proceed on a very careful basis with, a lot more oversight. And if they don't like it, then, I guess, we don't continue. But my understanding is if when people want to invest and get access to that huge market over there, they have to play by the rules they set, right? So it could be a little bit more like that for, countries that we don't have, a history of good relations or trust with, or that we don't, just give them a lot more oversight.
See, one of the ideas that I've had in my head is, okay, here we're talking about potential investment by state-owned firms from China in a place like northern Alberta in the oil sands. In the offshore of Newfoundland and Labrador, they're hoping for a big oil and gas project called Bay du Nord. Now, if it ever goes ahead, it would be owned by the state-owned oil company of Norway. Equinor would be the major owner in that. Mm-hmm. Do you see a difference between the two? Norway versus China, for example?
Yes.
You do?
Yes,
yeah.
Because we do have, we are very different in our approaches to human rights, to, how we treat, just our outlooks on life. And, China is a dictatorship. They can change their mind on anything at any time on the whim, right? But then now so can the U.S. And I do think that, so we do need to look outside because, the previous caller said Trump was only in power for 3 years. I do not think that the mindset that got him into power is going to change just because he's gone. I think, there are people already trying to.
Well, he might be out of be out of office, but will MAGA die after Trump leaves office?
Exactly.
Right.
So
will there be another Trump?
That's right. Yeah. So to think that we're going to go back to what was, I think is naive. I think we are changing, period. And so we do need to look elsewhere, but we do also need to, we maybe need to just take a way more heavy-handed approach for countries or for different investors that have a different opinion than we do on our outlook, and we have to just be a lot more, give a lot more oversight on them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your call. That's all the time we have for calls in this hour, but a reminder, we have a full hour ahead of Talkback, so if you're on the line, just hang on the line. We're going to bring everyone right up to date on the latest breaking news, and then get right back to your opinions on this topic today, which is about foreign investment from China in this country. What if it involves important sectors in our economy, strategically important sectors of our economy? 1-833-668-2577 on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. Should big Chinese companies, big state-owned companies in China, this is our question of the day, should they be allowed to make major investments in Canada? In places like the oil sands, or in the potash industry, or uranium mining in Northern Ontario for critical minerals? Should they even be allowed to maybe take over Canadian companies? What do you think? 1-833-668-2577 as the Prime Minister is in Beijing, along with several members of his cabinet, forging closer relations with China. This is one of the big questions emerging today. Roland is up next. Thank you for calling. Oh, no, Roland. Daniel in Okotoks. Let's go to Okotoks. Daniel.
Hi there, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Daniel. What's your opinion?
I think it is a very, very bad idea for us to go to China when it comes to foreign investments. I'm not against foreign investment whatsoever, but it doesn't mean we can't be selective of our foreign investments. And the biggest thing is China functionally is a dictatorship. They don't play by many rules of the established rule book of the world in business or anything like that. And not to mention, they're across the Pacific Ocean. And they're a very large, I guess, antagonist of the United States when it comes to trade as well as just geopolitically. And as far as I'm concerned, if we want foreign investment, we can look elsewhere than China. China's a very large country, of course, but there's a lot more that we can be doing in other places, say Europe, the United States, South America even, to look for foreign investments versus China.
Okay, you mentioned the United States. I want to read this again, just so our listeners can keep this in mind. I'd like your take on this, Daniel. The national security strategy of the Trump administration came out a few months ago. It's kind of taken on new meaning in light of the action in Venezuela. But this is what it says. We will deny non-hemispheric competitors the ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities to own or control strategically vital assets in our hemisphere. So, given that it says that, how do you think the Americans would react to Canada letting big Chinese companies make big investments in Canada? What do you think the reaction would be from the United States?
I think the reaction from the United States would be basically the same as if the United States were to do something like that in Iran or Pakistan. It would be the exact same, and it would be to go in and take those resources by force, because that's just what big empires do. It doesn't matter what force it is, either economically or through military force, but it's most likely possible that either one could happen. And the fact of the matter is we share the largest land border in the world with the United States. And like it or not, we don't have the military to defend ourselves against such a thing. So and to be fair, the United States versus China, when it comes to who we are as Canadians and who the Chinese are and who the United States are, I mean, we share a border with the United States, we share language with the United States, we share a business model and a very similar history with the United States. Whether it be takeover by one or the other, if I had to choose, I'd rather the United States, but I don't want to give them that cannon fodder to do so. And This is the slippery slope that a lot of people have been talking about on your show, is that this could lead into a ground war or an economic destruction of this country, so much so that the United States has no choice.
Well, I would hate to think it would come to that, Daniel, but I do thank you for your call. Let's move along. Tim is up next on the line. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Rob. I agree with most of your callers. I think it's a really bad idea for China to be allowed to invest and own any companies here in Canada. But let's face it, Rob, what choice do we have? The Liberals have scared away most of the other people that would invest. ConocoPhillips has just pulled out in the summer. BP is gone. Shell is gone. Total is gone. Who's left?
Okay. So what do you do in that circumstance then?
Well, you make it more attractive for other companies to invest in Canada. Okay. And right now, with the No Pipelines Act still in play and all of the other regulations the federal government has in place, Canada just isn't an attractive place to invest for oil companies, probably mining companies as well.
Okay. So if we change the investment climate, you're saying, in this country, we wouldn't have to go, my words, say cap in hand to China looking for more foreign investment from that country.
I couldn't have put it better.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's stop here. Yeah. Hour number 2 of Talkback is underway. 1-833-668-2577. We're also going to play you the full exchange. A lot came out of this. It was the news media that's with the Prime Minister on this trip to China. And it was a scrum after a full day of meetings there. And remember, the 13 hours ahead of where we are in Canada right now. So they had been through a full day, and then they met with the news media. And it was the industry minister, Melanie Joly, and the natural resources / energy minister, Tim Hodgson. A lot of pointed questions about just what's going on here with the natural resources minister meeting with the big state-owned companies in China today, the leaders of those companies in China today. Are the investment rules about to change? Didn't rule that out. You'll hear the entire exchange and all the reporters' questions when we come back on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Prime Minister Carney is in China, along with a number of his leading cabinet ministers, natural resources minister, industry minister, foreign affairs minister. Full day of meetings today, first day. Later today, our time, in about 8 hours from now, is the big state dinner with President Xi. And then about 4 or 5 hours after that, there's going to be a news conference. So the earliest that we'll hear from the prime minister will be like sometime early tomorrow. Now, today, after the first full day of meetings, there was a scrum with the Canadian news contingent. Many news reporters are on this trip along with the prime minister, and they took some questions, and they were specifically asking about this MOU between Canada and China in the oil and gas sector and what that could mean for Chinese investment in this country. I want you to hear the whole thing because it will flush it out, give you more context, only about 2.5 minutes. Okay, so let's roll the tape here.
In the joint statement, the joint roadmap today that was released by both countries, you welcomed investments in a number of areas, including energy. In 2012, the Canadian government shut the oil sands off to further investment from China. That was in 2012. Are you open to more investment from China in the oil sands now?
So today, China is a major investor in the oil sands, both as an operator and as a passive investor. They desire to have more of our energy. As long as they're a responsible producer, we're open to more investment from China.
Can I ask you to clarify that answer, please? The 2012 policy walled off new investment, and you say they're an active player today. Sure, because of previous investments. Are you open to changing the Investment Canada Act to bring in more Chinese investment in the oil sands?
Look, they're already major investors. They have the opportunity to increase their production. If they, like anyone else, is going to invest in new operations, they would go through the Investment Canada Act. But let me be clear. We are here because we share a goal. We share a goal on getting to net zero. We believe we have lots of common interests with respect to how we use clean energy to get there, and we have common interests around how to get there on a conventional basis. And we're going to exploit that for the benefit of Canadian workers and for Canadians.
And I think just to add to that, it's important to remember that the Investment Canada Act was recently modified to increase powers of the government to make sure that we would have the guardrails important when it comes to national security and economic security. So there's no need to change the legislation. We have these powers, and we'll look at case by case. But as Tim was saying, we already have major investments in the sector.
So you don't view it as a national security issue. I guess what I'm trying to understand is how does this government view investment by China, including the state-owned companies that you met today, into that sector?
That's already the case. That decision has already been made in the past.
They operate today.
Yeah, that's it.
They have the opportunity to increase their production if they do it in a responsible way and want to add to that, and it complies with the Investment Canada Act. That creates jobs for Canadians. That's good for Canada.
And I think, oui, je vais répondre, Laurence, okay? Mais donne-moi 30 secondes. I think also what is important is we're following what's going on in the world. We're definitely following what's going on in Venezuela. And so we need to make sure that we have good opportunities and good clients. And definitely that's been the case with China.
And definitely that's been the case with China. Creates good jobs for Canadians, good for Canada. What do you think about what you're hearing there? Let's go to Neil. He's in Sylvan Lake today. Hi, Neil.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Neil. What's your opinion?
You know, I was just wondering, do provinces not have control of their own resources?
Yes.
So who is Ottawa to go down to China and make deals with Alberta to bring communism into Alberta?
Well, you heard the natural resources minister there, if that's how you view it. Communism is already in Alberta. They already own an oil sands company in Alberta.
God, it just drives me crazy. These liberals are whacked out.
Whacked out?
I just don't get it how they can go down there and start making deals with the Alberta oil sands, and it's the province's control.
Well, I think they would defend that by saying they're trying to create economic opportunity, not just for people in Alberta, but for people all across the country.
Oh, okay.
Right. Do you think it's a good, for example, Neil, do you think it's a good idea to sell more oil and gas to China? To build another pipeline to the BC coast?
We should have had pipelines 10 years ago.
Right. Well, that's part of the agreement that they signed today. They signed an MOU between Canada and China, where they say they're going to agree on expanding trade in oil and gas. Do you think that's a good thing?
Absolutely not.
You don't think it's a good thing to sell more oil and gas to China?
Your premier
thinks it's a your premier thinks it's a good thing. Your premier thinks it's a good thing.
No, I don't.
You don't think so? Okay. Well, I think you're in the minority there, Neil. Okay. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for your call. More of your calls just ahead on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should big state-owned companies in China be allowed to make major investments in sectors of our economy like the oil sands in Alberta, but not just the oil sands in Alberta? Think mining in Northern Ontario, the offshore oil and gas sector in Atlantic Canada, for example, or uranium or potash, whatever the case might be. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Daryl, is in Lethbridge right now. Daryl? Hi, Daryl.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, Daryl. Thank you. What's your opinion here?
I'm of the opinion that if the U.S. wants to come in and take our resources, China has all the right in the world to come in and help our economy. All we need is some investment to get it going. We need investments, and I'd rather have it from China than from Donald Trump.
Really? You'd rather have investment from China than the United States?
Yes, I would.
You would?
With Donald Trump. With Donald Trump, yes. I do not like the guy. I do not like Daniel Smith. I do not like Pierre Poilievre. And I've been in Alberta all my life. And I do not see who was it? Lisa Raitt and another she wasn't a conservative, but they were talking about
Anne McClellan. She works a lot with Anne McClellan, the former Liberal MP and cabinet minister.
Okay, and they were discussing about why we can't get our economy going, and we have to take some rules out to let some investments come in. And I'm saying investments like we have to produce the final product too. We can't give them the raw materials. So I can see everybody is in for their own deal. Ontario with the electric cars, potash, all of that stuff. But I just don't see. I'm willing to take a chance on China before I'd take a chance on the U.S.
Really? Even though it's a one-party dictatorship that represses its people, where there are no human rights, no free media, censors the internet, partakes in hostage diplomacy, oppresses religious and ethnic minorities, takes away the rights of people who lived in Hong Kong after they took over Hong Kong, threatens to invade Taiwan, runs intimidation campaigns against Canadians of Chinese descent, interferes in our elections, partakes in espionage on an industrial scale, the likes of which we've never seen before. You're still okay with all China is a pretty good place?
Donald Trump is no different. Donald Trump's no different.
Okay.
No. Daniel Smith is no different.
Really? Daniel Smith is no different than a one-party dictatorship in China?
You betcha. She's trying to get everything.
Really?
If she wants to change the rules midway because they're not suiting her purpose, she does it.
Okay.
This recall thing.
Let me ask you, because it seems to me like you've been smoking the drapes. If you were opposed to Danielle Smith, could you not go protest on the steps of the legislature in Edmonton? What do you think would happen to you if you did that in Beijing? What do you think would happen to you?
I'd probably be arrested.
Yeah, and worse, sir. And you know it, and I know it. We'll be right back. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're in the home stretch of Talkback today, asking about foreign investment from China into this country in places like the oil sands. Should they be allowed to increase their stake or even take over Canadian companies in that space? What do you think? Or other key sectors of the economy that are strategically important. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Sherry in Calgary. Sherry?
Hi, Rob. How are you today?
Hi, Sherry. Very good today, Sherry. Yeah. The weather is terrible, but I'm okay.
Oh, the weather here is lovely.
Well, send it this way, please. It's like a blizzard here today, so yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a scary, scary world today. You know it, and I know it. And I had a relative that worked with Nexen Oil when the Chinese came here a few years ago, and it wasn't very good. I think it's going to take Canadian work away, and I really think it's just not going to be good for us. And I'm with a lot of your other speakers, and I don't know. It's just put a bad feeling in my gut. So I think more work is going to be replaced by us because that's what happened with Nexen, and it's going to be. We're having enough problems now with too many immigrants, especially in Alberta. I don't know about you, but it's kind of sad where. I got a grandchild that has to do schoolwork or a job for school, and he can't even get a job because there's too many immigrants that have a job. So
okay, well, that's a different topic for another day. We're not really talking about immigration today, but
So, but I think it's just going to be bad for Canada. I'm not with it at all.
You think it would be bad for Canada? Okay, Sherry, thank you. Let's go to Mike up next. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Rob. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi, Mike. You're welcome, Mike. What's your opinion here?
So I'm a former employee of Nexen. I left before China National Offshore Oil Company, or CNOOC, bought them for $15 billion when Stephen Harper was prime minister.
Yeah.
Internally, I've heard stories and stuff like that, but the bottom line was that CNOOC converted it into their type of company, significant investment, significant Canadian oil sands producer, and they continued that. One of the key things, doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, is that CNOOC purchased it at fair market value. And, you know, we're in a market economy with that type of benefit coming into Canadians, and largely Canadians were the biggest recipients of the benefits of CNOOC's investment. Now, in terms of the present day scenario, China needs oil. You've heard Trump say on and on that he doesn't need anything from Canada. The sooner we build additional pipelines to the West Coast to export to Asia, the better off we're all going to be. The investment from China and South Korea and Japan, Malaysia, and Indonesia continues in Alberta around large developments of oil sands, and that should continue. It's a commercial transaction, represents fair market value. It's a benefit to Albertans and Canadians. So getting everything up against China versus United States, the Americans historically have been very flaky with their investments in Canada, although Canada's been the biggest recipient of foreign direct investment in modern history. The American oil companies come and go at their pleasure, and they take advantage of situations where provinces or Alberta is on its knees, whereas longer-term investment, which the Chinese have shown and continue to show, is a benefit to us.
Okay. Thank you. You're in the minority opinion today, Mike, but I appreciate your call and getting that side of it out. Let's move along to Mark up next. Hi, Mark. What would you say, Mark?
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
Very good, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to be in the minority as well, and I got a few reasons why.
Fair enough.
First and foremost, I wasn't a Carney fan during the election, but I'm starting to change my opinion now just because of what he is trying to do for Canada. I have friends that live in China, actually friends that live all over the world, and they don't complain about their country like we complain about their country. But having China, we already have China invested in Canada. Like you said, in oil and gas, real estate, we have them in wood products, pulp and paper, etc. People across Canada themselves are already investing in China. I think it's a huge win for Canada if we can expand our global trade with China. We do it with every other country in the world. Why wouldn't we do it with one of the biggest economies in the world? And then you hear my second point is everybody talks about Donald Trump and being mad at Canada and they're going to take over Canada. Well, it would be financial suicide for the U.S. to try and take Canada because they talk about the longest unprotected border. How long would it be if they had to protect all of the west coast of British Columbia up through the territories across the north and over the east coast? They would have to soak trillions and trillions of dollars just into defending one big U.S. economy. So I fully support what Carney's doing. I fully support that it's going to create jobs, and I mean thousands of jobs for Canadians, and it's going to be really, really good for Canada. That's my opinion.
All right. Thank you. As I say, that's the minority opinion today, however. But very well argued, I must say. And convincing. 1-833-668-2577 if you have a counter opinion to that. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
In many ways, a story like this and an issue like this, foreign investment in Canada, potential takeovers of Canadian companies, it's kind of like a trip back in time. I was reporting on a lot of this 10, 15 years ago. I was on the business beat back then, and one of the major questions in Canada at that time was, are too many important Canadian companies falling into the hands of foreign owners? Are we The term back then was, are we hollowing out Canada? And losing control over vital Canadian resources. And that is part of the discussion here today. If you think back to it, Inco was taken over by Vale. Falconbridge was taken over by Xstrata. Alcan was taken over by Rio Tinto. Noranda was taken over. One of the deals that was actually blocked by Ottawa during the Harper years was a bid by BHP Billiton to take over the Potash Corporation of Saskatchewan, what it was called at the time. Ottawa kind of, it drew a line in the sand there. It said, no, we're not going to let that happen. And Potash Corp merged with another company called Agrium, and the new company was renamed Nutrien, and that's what it's called to this day. But potash was deemed to be too important, so Ottawa said no. A lot of people were uncomfortable with what happened with the old Saskatchewan wheat pool, although the Harper government always insisted that foreign investment into the Saskatchewan wheat pool was supported by Western Canadian farmers who felt hamstrung by the old Saskatchewan wheat pool. But the wheat pool eventually demutualized, and then it bought a company called Agricor, and that company came Viterra, which was eventually bought by Glencore. And now you have this deal for Teck Resources and it looks like Ottawa's going to give the blessing to that, and it's going to be taken over by the big UK company, Anglo-American. But you'll notice none of these companies are Chinese. What if the Chinese were allowed to swing deals like this in Canada, take over big Canadian companies, the oil sands, the mining sector, and the uranium business, and the potash business? Would you be comfortable with that? Or do you think some assets are just too strategically important? They should remain in Canadian hands. In 2012, to the point today, Harper basically drew a line in the oil sands and said it's off limits to more foreign investment by Chinese companies. But what if the government loosened that restriction? 1-833-668-2577. Daryl is in Calgary. Thanks for calling, Daryl. What's your opinion today?
Oh, hi, Rob.
Hi, Dare.
Well, I also used to work at Nexon, and so hello to the other fellow out there, and I was a part of that takeover. But I since started my own company, and I've been doing business for 15 years, an engineering company. We deal with regulations. And my experience with the Chinese-owned companies, CNOC included, is they don't like to pay their bills. They don't see value in service companies, and they will get out of paying you any way they can. They can't be trusted. I've since not done business. I've fired those clients. The only reason I was able to get paid at the end was they were in a regulatory pinch where they were going to be shut down. So I was able to get payment to continue work, and at that point I let them go. So we have a rule. We will not do business with communist China-owned companies in Canada, anywhere. So we deal with all kinds of foreign-owned companies, Indonesia, U.S., you name it. None of them have treated us that way. They can all be trusted. It's mostly small companies and business distress that we watch for now. But we won't do business with Chinese companies. The other thing is when they came into Canada and they took over CNOC, they had an obligation to maintain Canadian workers. They didn't observe that obligation. They slowly removed those workers for Chinese workers from China. And then they tried to move their own service companies in from China as well. So the service companies here, there was pressure on the supply chain people to move Chinese-owned companies in place. So the bottom line is they can't be trusted. We initially, before we got to this point, we're doing a bid on a major project for one of those companies. We didn't get that work. One of our competitors did, and they were subbed to someone else. They didn't get paid, the main prime that was paying the sub. Thank God we didn't get that job. We would have been out of business. So they did prior to that put us all on a big Teams call. And one person, a Chinese guy, shouting at everyone, all the contractors, and he wanted us to sharpen our pencil, lump sum bids. And I expressed my opinion in there. I said, you've already killed somebody with an explosion at that plant, and you're going to put us in a lump sum situation. And what do you think is going to happen if there's commercial distress? Corners are going to get cut. People are going to be faced with operating assets that are definitely not safe to operate because somebody has cut a corner. They don't care. So of all the countries that I've dealt with, that own oil and gas operations or energy for that matter, communist-owned China, definitely won't do business with them. So that's my opinion.
Very interesting perspective, Daryl. Thank you for sharing that. Be right back. Time to fit a couple of more calls in. 1-833-668-2577 here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Rob is in Calgary, and he's up next on foreign investment by Chinese enterprises here in this country. How open are you to that? More of that, Rob. What would you say?
Oh, maybe you should pass everybody's phone number on to the scammers that think China should be allowed to invest here. They're ripe for scamming. Okay. I don't think we should have China investing here, and if they do let them, it should be a maximum of 20% in a company.
Okay.
They shouldn't have any control over it.
No control. Like no 50% plus one sort of thing, majority control of a project.
No, absolutely not.
No? Okay.
No, that's just asking for trouble.
What about people who are saying, look, we have to do a pivot? Listen to what we're hearing from the United States. Just this week, Donald Trump said, well, we don't need anything Canada has. We need to find new partners, business partners.
Yeah. And as far as getting the pipelines out, just like what was the other company that did that? They're building a big terminal in Washington. If we can't get it through BC, we might have to go through the U.S.
Oh, that is Nutrien, yeah. Nutrien,
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we need the investment, but we don't need Chinese investment.
Need investment, but not Chinese investment. Okay. Thank you, Rob, in Calgary. There is another way to look at this. We talked about this a couple of days ago, realpolitik, right? A few of you mentioned that earlier this week. Don't get hung up on ideologies. Think about what's in our interest and what's in Canada's interest right now, finding other markets for Canadian exports, because the United States is not as friendly as it used to be to Canada. Just as I mentioned to the caller, we don't need anything Canada has, according to Mr. Trump. Fine and dandy. So there will be people, and we've heard it from two Liberal cabinet ministers today. Let's see what kind of deals we can come up with China, even though it's not the most savory of places. And maybe you don't like how the country treats its people or treats other countries for that matter. Some people say about that about the United States as well. We've taken calls to that effect today. Set all of that aside and consider only what is in our interest. What's in our interest? We have lots of oil. We have lots of everything. If you can dig it out of the ground, drill for it, chop it down, harvest it, we have lots of it, and they need lots of it. So what if China is what it is, a one-party authoritarian state? They need our stuff. Let's sell them as much as they can buy. And if they don't buy it from us, they're going to buy it elsewhere. They'll buy it from Venezuela. They'll buy it from Iran or some energy-rich Gulf state or Nigeria. So it may as well be Canadian. That's one view. And another view along those lines is we need foreign investment. That's no secret. There's been a lack of that here. We need investors from other countries to come here, invest in this country, expand businesses, hire Canadians. This is good for Canada. That was one of the arguments being made by Tim Hodgson today. Despite what the politics of whatever country it is. And Mr. Hodgson mentioned the big Chinese state-owned companies are already doing business here. He's right. CNOOC, as mentioned, with people who were there at the time. Took over Nexen back in 2012. Gave them a foothold in the oil sands. The big state-owned Chinese companies are involved in the LNG projects on the West Coast. PetroChina is a partner in LNG Canada. Sinopec wants to have an ownership stake in Cedar LNG in Kitimat. So they're saying they're already here. They're already doing business here. They're playing by the Canadian rules. And as long as they do that, the government's not going to have a problem. If they want to expand their operations, maybe even be involved in new operations, they'll take a look at it. They'll take a look at it. And it's a global business. The Canadian energy business. Petronas is the Malaysian state energy company. It's doing business here. Mitsubishi. The South Korea Gas Corporation, KOGAS, and nobody bats an eyelash. Why make China an exception? That's the counter argument. We can pick this up again tomorrow, or get into anything else you want to tomorrow, because it'll be the Friday free-for-all talkback. That's always an adventure. Hope you join us then. Until then, the latest breaking news on News Radio.